China was the focus of the United States national security strategy that was published last year. But also, as you mentioned earlier, Chinese air defenses have been bought by Iran, but they seem to have been overpowered with relative ease. Is that because China is perhaps not as invested in Iran as maybe Iran hoped, or is this genuinely a failing on the part of the Chinese? Perhaps is the Chinese technology not as advanced as we might have thought? What's your reading on that?
I think it's a little bit of both. That's a really great question. I made a video yesterday, and I was just doing a deep dive on like what's the ultimate behind the scenes reason for this conflict. So I'll start with kind of the first part of your question with the different systems from China. They're not slouches. Obviously, China focuses heavily on defense. I mean, I remember through some of my military schools, this was an unclassified briefing where this professor came in and just gave us a diagram of one of the bases that China was building in the South China Sea. And it was a bunker underneath an island that went down 200 feet, just on a random, they took a coral reef, built a base on top of it, and they went down 200 feet. It's just wild, that amount of focus on the South China Sea and military capability. And so I think it's a battle of engineers at a certain point. How good are China's engineers? How well do they understand America's capability? How well can America keep those systems and tactics and engineering under wraps and not allow China to know how our systems work? It's really a battle of these big brain engineers at Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and these places where they're literally every day figuring out how to defeat China's air defenses. Because if you know how to defeat China and Russia's air defenses, then Venezuela's or Iran's are going to be easy, because likely China's not going to export the absolute top of the line to these different countries, right? That's just military 101. You don't export your top of the line military capability. You can export good military capability, but like the F-22 for the US, we don't export that because that's the king predator of the sky. You don't want everybody to have that. So same mentality with Russia and China. Oil is important. Obviously, the flow of oil to the world is important. When it comes to Iran having a nuclear weapon, keeping them from having that's important. But if you look at who's getting most of that oil, it's China. China's getting the lion's share of the oil from Iran. And they also are one of the biggest controllers, I think they're the biggest controller of rare earth minerals. Their focus on rare earth minerals is very strategic, and it's very smart. In Afghanistan, for example, they control a lot of the mines in northern Afghanistan, which are rich with rare earth minerals. And they've struck deals. This is even before the US pulled out of Afghanistan. They struck deals with Afghanistan itself to control those mines. And so their focus is rare earth minerals. So if now they're in control of rare earth minerals and they have a extremely friendly Chinese regime in Tehran, now they're basically controlling a lot of the world's oil as well. So now they've got both. So if you really think of the strategic implications of this conflict, I think one of the biggest benefactors is Taiwan, because if China can't just fully control that flow of oil out of the Straits of Hormuz, executing a war without oil is very tough, as you can imagine, right? So if the US can have a more friendly, we just saw President Trump post on Truth Social this morning that there is a less radicalized regime that he's discussing with. If it's a less China-friendly regime, or at least China has to think twice about whether they're going to continue to get the oil or not, I think this is just strategically, I think they're going to sit back and say, ooh, yeah, maybe Taiwan, maybe we need to delay that a little bit, because the rumors are they wanted to take Taiwan in 2027. That's kind of a well-known rumor, that it just looked strategically like that's where it was lining up to happen. So China taking Taiwan, I mean, the different facilities there that manufacture microchips, the ability of that to control the world's economy, it can't be understated. So if China takes Taiwan and now they fully own the flow of oil, because they pretty much do in Iran with the previous regime. So now if they don't, that's a really big factor for Xi Jinping to step back and say, ooh, yeah, maybe the whole Taiwan thing, we're good for now. And maybe it delays that by 20, 30 years or even further down the line.
And And sticking with the sort of technology question, I mean, a lot of people have talked about this as the first AI war, and not just in terms of the sort of slop propaganda that's been coming out of the Iranian regime, but in terms of also some of the weaponry that's been deployed. Has there been anything that surprised you, that's been novel, that you thought is interesting and worth commenting on?
Well, AI, I think there's so many uses for it. I mean, just even from a human intelligence perspective, tracking the different patterns of life of these members of the IRGC, top level leadership, drones using AI to figure out who's who. That's likely going on right now as we speak. Something that I'm thinking this will actually expedite is usage of undersea drone technology that uses AI. So there's a system that's recently been released by Lockheed Martin. It's called the Lamprey. I don't have any connection to Lockheed Martin. I'm not sponsored by them, okay? Uh, but when I look at these different systems, I think about, okay, the capability of these lampreys. They're underwater sea leeches, basically. They're an evolution of the UUV, which is an underwater unmanned vehicle. And those are what Iran has been using to strike some of the ships with as well. If you see some of the ships that have been struck that have holes by the like by the bottom of the ship itself, that's likely not a drone. That's likely some sort of underwater vehicle that's coming in and hitting that. So if you have some sort of a system underneath the surface, like the Lamprey, I mean, your viewers can just go to YouTube and look up Lamprey, Lockheed Martin. This thing has the ability to talk with swarms of themselves, and they can just rest on the seabed. They can sit down there, track. They can do what's called find, fix, track, and target the different UUVs being launched by the IRGC itself. So if you have a swarm of these things in the Straits of Hormuz that are just down there kind of waiting, this is, I don't think this, maybe it exists now. I mean, but if not, I think we're going to see a big evolution on things like this becoming more mainstream in certain waterways that you have to protect, even protecting ports in the US, protecting ports in the UK, because I think that's kind of the next battlefield with a lot of these terrorist tactics, is to get more advanced at striking energy infrastructure. So instead of just drone swarms up above using AI, think drone swarms down below using AI. I think that's probably one of the big things. And these underwater sea leeches, the lamprey, can latch on to ships and just go with them and maybe wait and see, what's the ship doing? Is it dropping off mines? What is it up to? And then it can go to the surface and actually launch drones of its own to do ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. So I think that's the next frontier for AI, is to be used underwater.